Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll get started shortly, just give it a minute or two for some more people to join the chat, the stream. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name's Lauren and I'm part of the WORK180 team. Welcome to our latest community event, which is called Career Change Catalyst, Overcoming Fear and Strategizing Your Path to a Fulfilling New Career. For anyone unfamiliar with WORK180, I'll just give you a quick bit of background first. Our mission is to improve workplace standards for all women. We assess employers on a range of factors, including paid parental leave, pay equity, flexible working arrangements, and much more, and then endorse employers that we find are truly committed to supporting women's careers. These employers are featured on our website, along with detailed information about their employee policies and benefits. So before applying for a role, you can jump on our website and check out if the employer is endorsed as a great employer for women and if their policies and benefits really align with your needs. Today, we're meeting in our free online community space where we regularly offer free career coaching sessions like the one you're attending today. This community forum is also a safe space where you can ask questions at any time, and also we'd love to see networking with like-minded women as well. And today we're going to be hearing from one of our fantastic career coaches, Hannah Hamad. She's going to get started on her presentation shortly, but please feel free to use the chat box during the presentation to ask any questions that you might have, and Hannah will answer those at the end of the session. Please feel free to also jump onto the chat and introduce yourself to the group as well if you want to. And I really hope you enjoyed today's session. I'll now pass on to Hannah.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Hamad. My business is Small Circle. So I'm a career coach and strategist, mainly for women, but I do work with men from time to time, based here in Melbourne. And I've had a few sort of career shifts and pivots throughout the course of my professional life, and I'll talk to you a little bit about some of those in a minute. Thank you all so much for signing up. It's a privilege to be here to chat to you about this today. I should just add, I'm having slight tech glitches. So my notes are actually parked off to the side here. So if at any point you see me kind of just looking off to the side, that's because I, for some reason, cannot get my notes up on the screen today. So I'm guessing if you guys have registered for this event, you are possibly thinking about a career change. Maybe you've been thinking about it for a while, but you haven't done anything about it. Or maybe it's something that you're just starting to think about, at the moment. Career changes are probably one of the things that I receive. I'd say probably about half the people that get in contact with me will be looking to make some kind of change, whether it's a career shift or a pivot, so something a little bit on the smaller side, or a major kind of career overhaul. The reality is most people at some point in their professional life will have harbored, I say, a secret career dream. They're not always secret. Some people are sort of more open to sort of sharing those ideas or wishes, I guess, more than others. Plenty of us have had career regrets, particularly if you're not happy with what you're doing at the moment. On a Sunday evening, if you're getting the Sunday sads, or on a Monday morning when you're really not feeling like showing up for work, you might start to think about all of those other things that could have been, or those ideas that maybe you've sort of given a little bit of thought to, but have never really pursued. The reality is, for most people, our career paths are decided at a really quite a young age. For a lot of us, we start, kind of making those decisions about our careers when we're 17 or 18, usually heavily influenced by parents, or perhaps things that we've been told about ourselves when we're at school, things we're good at, things we're not so good at. But for most of us, sort of heavily influenced by our parents, I'm from London originally. I've lived in the UK, I've lived in New Zealand, and I've been in Australia for sort of 12 or 13 years now. But something I hear of a lot from people who come onto calls with me or go on to work with me is they're not really sure why they made the decisions they did. So when I sort of say, like, did you go to uni? What did you study? What made you choose that? A large number of people will say, like, school suggested it or my parents suggested it. But for a lot of people, they're not quite sure. And perhaps, the start of that career path was something that they just kind of fell into. They went to uni, they did their degree, and they've sort of muddled along since then. So for a lot of people, they kind of they go to uni or they choose what they're going to study, they get that first job. Fast forward 10 years or so, and that's when you might start to see people sort of feeling that dissatisfaction. So I get people approaching me for career advice or wanting to work with me or just having one of my free calls that I offer. Probably from around about late 20s will be when I sort of first be the sort of youngest age where I sort of chat to people. Then again, often there's this period of re-evaluation for women, maybe mid-30s. So perhaps they've started a family, they've had one child, they're thinking about their second, and they've realised that, what they've sort of been doing so far isn't going to work for them now that they're sort of in motherhood zone. And then the other kind of peak times when I tend to find people sort of reevaluating will be maybe later in the 40s. Maybe women have had children who are a bit older, and now they're thinking about a more major career change. And then also possibly sort of early 50s, I'll often get women sort of approaching me for career coaching then. That's when it's sort of like they're on the home stretch professionally. By the time you're in your mid-50s, you sort of know that maybe you don't really want to be working for much longer than, say, 8 years, 10 years. And it's sort of like that's the point at which it's now or never, right? So sometimes I'll see major career changes from women, sort of even in their early 50s. So I guess the message there is it's never too late, but you don't want to leave it sort of so far on in your career that it's sort of like there's no time left to actually enjoy a career change once you've made it. People are working longer into their careers these days. So if you were born in 1980, which I was, and you're employed in the traditional workforce, you can expect to be working until you're maybe 65 to 70. So if you realise when you're in your late 20s, in your mid-30s, in your mid-40s, that the career path you're on isn't really working for you anymore, does it really make sense to keep walking that same path until you're 65, 70? The reality is it's, it might be sort of scary and sort of, not everyone will be brave enough to do it. But the reality is a lot of people will have, more than one career change in this day and age. It's not uncommon for me to encounter people who've had a couple of career changes already and maybe they're thinking about a third. So just a nice little thinking about the sort of secret career dream or the secret career goals makes me think of a friend of mine who's a very successful professional. She works in corporate finance for a big, a very well-known name. And she harbors secret dreams of becoming a diabetes nurse educator, a real estate agent, and a Zumba instructor. And I just love how, how many different kind of dimensions there are in there. Like she's so much more than the finance sort of professional that everyone kind of thinks of her. She's got these aspirations and these goals, and it would be quite easy for her to go away and do the training that she needs to do and do the Zumba instructor and do that as sort of a side business. Diabetes nurse educator, obviously that involves going back to uni, more study. So that's not really a sort of a straightforward move. And I can see why she would be feeling a little bit held back from making that change. So what are the reasons why people are afraid to make the career change? These are the common things that I hear when people approach me and maybe they've been thinking about making a career change and that they're not feeling quite confident in doing that. One of the main things I hear from people who are worried about making a non-sort of linear, like a non-obvious step, or a bold career move will be this idea that it's a waste of everything that they've done so far. And so I often hear people will say to me, look, but I went to uni and I studied for all of those years and I've kind of built up this reputation or all this collateral professionally, and it feels like it would be a waste. And I have more than, I've had more than a handful of clients come on calls and say, look, my parents have said it's going to be a waste of my degree, a waste of all my effort. And that's a limiting belief that's going to very much keep people chained to a path that's no longer serving them and possibly never did to begin with, right? If they were already not on the right path, it's just going to keep them chained to this path that's just really not working for them. Some of the other things I hear, so these are sort of some little snippets and little quotes. Well, I've never been a project manager before. All my roles have been sort of frontline roles. So I will often sort of hear from people who are teachers. So teachers are people, a group that sort of come to me quite often, nursing staff, allied health staff, sort of frontline workers who maybe don't necessarily want to be on the front line anymore. They might still feel really passionate about health or education, but they've never worked in sort of a corporate role, or they've never worked even in an office before potentially. So I will hear, look, I've never been a project manager before. My roles have all been frontline. I studied accounting. I didn't study HR. I don't have the right qualifications. I would need to study to get a foot in the door. I'm not senior enough in my career yet. And a really common one, particularly from women, would be I don't meet all of the criteria in the job description or the person's specification. So these are some of the things that people will say to me when I say, so what's stopping you from making that move? Often people are too quick to discount opportunities which might actually be more achievable than they first think. So if you're thinking about making, sort of a huge career shift, something that's so radically different to what you've done before, it might not necessarily be as easy as some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today. So a good example there would be, I had a client who she'd had 4 children, took about 10 years out of the workforce so that she could focus on raising her family. Before having her first child, she was a lawyer. She worked in corporate law. And now that her children are older, they're well and truly into their school years, she knows that she doesn't want to go back to law. And we worked together on one of my coaching programs, and she decided that she wanted to be a primary school teacher. That was something that she'd thought about before. It's something that had been on her mind all the way through her mat leaves, her 4 mat leaves. And we did the work together. We did some coaching, and that was what she landed on. Now, obviously, in order to go from being a lawyer to a primary school teacher, that's not a case of doing a bit of volunteer work or being strategic in what you put on your CV. She's got to go and study to do that. So yes, sometimes people do need to go away and do, some study or some retraining. That tends to be the case where it's sort of a more radical career shift, particularly in a profession where there's a lot of governance or regulation, right? And that's kind of, health, education, law, things like that. It's not as straightforward as transferable skills and a really strategic CV. You might have to go away and retrain. But for people who are thinking of making more of a pivot or a shift, so those sort of smaller changes, it often is a case of how you position yourself, how you draw upon those transferable skills, some really careful networking. And the real reason that people are letting those opportunities slip away is lack of confidence, fear of change, and a reluctance to do the hard work needed to get where you want to go. Okay, because the truth is, if you are wanting to make a change in your career, whether it's a small shift or a major overhaul, there is more hard work involved. It's not the same as just applying for the job that you're doing now at a different organization. It's not the same as just applying for that next level up. Like, you are going to have to do a little bit more work in order to get there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be really, impossible. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be as hard as you think it could be. So one of the other things that people will often talk to me about, or one of the reasons it's sort of got to the point where they've come onto a call with me or they're wanting to invest in coaching, is they've been opinion shopping. Like, they've outsourced their decision making so much, and they've asked so many people for their thoughts on, what would you do? What do you think I should do? What do you think I'd be good at? This is what I'm thinking of doing. Like, am I crazy? That they've sort of, the chatter has become so loud that they actually can't make that decision for themselves anymore. So that'll be a reason why sometimes people will come to me. And often people are well-meaning, and it tends to be sort of the nearest and dearest. So the main culprits here will be, when I'm working with women, it'll be their husband, partner, boyfriend, their mum, sister, and sort of, possibly, the well-meaning best friends can completely kind of cloud the decision-making process. Or all it can take is one or two kind of poorly landed comments, then that can be enough for someone who's thinking about making a career change to completely pull back from that. And just kind of shove it off to the side, feeling that it's crazy or stupid or impossible when, in fact, it actually might not be. So I just want to talk a little bit about the pitfalls of opinion shopping and things to be aware of. And these are things really that I think can apply to other areas of life as well. So outsourcing your decision-making will cloud your judgment, reduce your confidence in your own decision-making, and leave you open to further permission seeking. And often when we are sort of asking other people for their opinion or their thoughts, particularly where we're doing it sort of, to multiple people, or we're continuously doing it, we just want someone to say, go for it. We just want that permission for someone to say, no, you're not crazy. You can do it. Give it a go and I'll back you. And when we don't get that, that's when we keep asking other people, when we're sort of shopping around for more opinions. But when we don't get that sort of permission or that validation, that can just kind of sort of leave you in a position that you're no longer happy with, and you kind of just delay potentially making that change that could be really great for you. So by all means, check in with a trusted advisor. I'm not saying don't sort of take on board other people's feedback or advice. Like sometimes people can have really great ideas about something you would be great at. So I think you just need to be a little bit choosy about whose opinion you're kind of seeking, and sort of keep it contained to, a few people who are really sort of trusted, who know you well, and are more likely to kind of support you in that decision making rather than being prescriptive or kind of shutting down your ideas or your opinions. So positioning for a pivot, that's something that I've done a little bit in my career. So this little timeline here, or this little sort of graph that my amazing VA did for me, I guess sets out broadly what I've done in my career. And I realized very early on in my career that I probably was not going to walk a very traditional career path. I'm not a very traditional person. I did law at uni, and that was something that was very important to my parents. So I went to uni in London and I did law. I did very well. I'm someone who was, I was pretty academic. I was hardworking. After I finished my law degree, I then went on to law school. I trained as a barrister. And again, I did very well, particularly in the sort of areas that were sort of less around the subject matter itself, but more transferable. So where I really aced law school was around negotiation, conference skills, advocacy, so public speaking, being able to kind of, I guess sort of plead my client's case on my feet on the fly. It was, I very much enjoyed law school, and if I went back in time, I would do it again. But I really didn't want to be a lawyer. It was so important to my parents, and I did the thing. I went to uni, I went to law school, I aced it. And as soon as I sort of had got that piece of paper that said how great I would be as a lawyer, I went off and I did something different. So I was very passionate about politics, and I really enjoyed that. And I got a job working in Parliament in the UK. I was an advisor to a few MPs there for a period, for a good few years. And I really enjoyed that. And a lot of the skills and experience that I gained through studying law were highly transferable. So a huge part of my work was writing speeches, writing opinion pieces. I worked on a number of pieces of legislation, drafting amendments to law, to bills that were sort of going through the House at the time. And the first MP that hired me because of my background. She was the spokesperson for children's schools and families. And one of the areas of law that I specialised in was family law. And she'd known that there were these major legislative changes happening. And she could see how my background would be really useful there. And I absolutely loved the work that I did working in Parliament. I was very good at it. I really enjoyed it. So that was a great period of my career for me that I look back on in my 20s very fondly. The thing is, when you work in politics, you get to a point where unless you're going to carry on working for politicians or for a party, you sort of have to make a decision about where to next. And the sort of common directions that people would go from there would be around sort of media, sort of spin doctoring, so working for government organisations or elsewhere, or going down more of a policy route, again, typically within government. I really love wordsmithing. I love writing. I'm a very strong, persuasive writer. That's one of the reasons that clients who hire me to do their CVs or their cover letters, will have a really high level of success in terms of getting to the interview. I had a really strong track record in getting my MPs into the media. I had a really strong track record in helping my MPs around election time, so with campaigning. And again, those are skills that I really draw upon now in my sort of work as a career coach. I got MPs elected, and I help my clients get selected when it comes to the jobs now. So I decided to sort of go down that media and reputation management pathway. So that was what I did there. Again, I held a number of senior roles. I did a lot of crisis management. But as I was getting further along in my 30s, and particularly when I became a mum, I was finding that work really wasn't family friendly. So my needs had very much changed at that point. And I didn't want journalists phoning me, at midnight on a Friday night when I had a 12-month-old baby. So again, that was a time when I had to sort of think a little bit about my career, what was working for me, what wasn't, what was really important to me, what was I really interested in. And I didn't have the appetite for a huge kind of career change. So I was looking for opportunities to shift and pivot. And something that I'd always been really passionate about was employee engagement, workplace relations, supporting leaders, CEOs and executives to connect better with their workforces. How to join the dots between all of those kind of decisions and the strategy and the sort of direction of an organization that was happening at the top with the people on the ground. How could we get them more engaged? And so at that point, I had a bit of a career pivot, and I focused more on workplace communications and employee engagement. So again, you can sort of see how I've gone from the law to political advisor to the media and reputation management, spin doctoring, to then taking all of those skills and that experience and applying it sort of inwardly within workplaces. Absolutely love that chapter again. And I was sort of exposed to, I had the opportunity to work a lot more with sort of recruitment teams, HR professionals, senior leadership teams, and got a really strong sense of like what makes a really great workplace. Like how can we retain our talent? And then I had another child, so I had my second child. And again, I was sort of like, this isn't quite working for me now. And so many of the leaders that I'd worked with, during that sort of chapter of my career had said to me, like, you're very good at coaching. You've done some really amazing things in terms of employee engagement. And I had the opportunity to lead, a few sort of large teams. I was very, very interested in developing my people. That was something I always felt really passionately about as a leader. I was very much focused on how can I help my people get where they want to go next. I was always so much more focused on that than I was on sort of, output or work delivery. And so I studied coaching while I was on maternity leave. And that sort of is how I've got to where I am today. So you can see, you can see how one area feeds into another. At no point have I, apart from when I studied coaching, and that was to really get a strong understanding of different sort of coaching techniques and best practice, at no point have I had to kind of go away and retrain or restudy. It's very much been sort of pivoting, how I've positioned myself, which skills I've sort of chosen to showcase at each step along the way, really strong network and reputation for being really, really good at what I do. At no point there have I kind of had to go away and get a whole other degree. At no point did I take a pay cut. So all, every step along the way, I've either matched my salary or gone on to increase it. And my roles have either been a sidestep or they've been more senior. Okay, there's this real sort of myth that, if you want to change something in your career, it's going to involve a huge pay cut or starting from the bottom and working your way up. And the truth is sometimes it does. But not always. It will very much depend on where you're going and what that change is all about. I think, and it's something that sort of really helped me, and one of my great strengths is being able to tell that really coherent, persuasive story in a CV. So joining up the dots for prospective employers. So at each of these sort of junctures where I've made a bit of a shift or had that pivot, at no point has someone who's been, filling a role or doing the recruitment looked at my application and gone, oh, that's really weird. I can't see why is this application in my pile? Like you're able to see how each of those stepping stones has taken me along to the next one. I joined the dots for them. I didn't submit applications that left hiring managers scratching their heads, wondering whether my CV and cover letter had sort of mistakenly landed in the wrong pile. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the changes, career changes I've sort of supported people with. Some of my little favorite case studies here. This one's a goodie. So this client was a pastry chef who really wanted to move into sustainability. And I'm conscious of time. I've already spoken a lot more than I planned to, but I feel so passionately about all things career that this tends to happen. So this client was a pastry chef, was really keen to make a change and move into sustainability. And I supported her in giving her CV a very drastic makeover. And I'll talk you through that a little bit now. So, all right. The professional profile section that I write for clients in their CV, that's the elevator pitch that sort of ideally will capture the reader and draw them in. In case you can't see this on your screen, I'm just going to read it out for you. So with over 15 years experience in high profile restaurant and food establishments, I have a strong track record in developing and implementing efficient and streamlined ways of working in fast-paced environments. I enjoy helping organizations become more sustainable, identifying opportunities to utilize untapped resources, reduce waste, and use my lateral thinking skills to problem solve. I'm embarking on an exciting new career chapter which reflects my deep passion for the environment. So I'm not talking about like the recipes, I'm not talking about the things that she created straight away. I'm helping them understand like why they have the CV of a pastry chef sitting in the pile for a sustainability role. When we're talking about some of the things that she sort of achieved at, in that role, so I'm very much focused on achievements and impact rather than tasks. Straight away, the first one on there is initiated and developed a new product line using excess products to create new menu items, reducing the amount of food going to landfill and increasing revenue. Okay. Second one, proposed practical solutions to minimize waste and reduce carbon emissions, and worked on changing the packaging to a more sustainable solution. Okay. I'm not going to linger on this one too long, but straight away you can get a sense of the approach I took to her CV. It wasn't really about food at all. It was about, reflecting, that commitment to sustainability and showing some of that transferable skills, like showing her strategic thinking. When it came down to the cover letter, so I wrote her cover letter for her too. Again, we're talking about like why this career change. We're talking about like why she's decided to do it, what some of the things she's done are in order to kind of support that change. So she did go away and do a little bit of study. It wasn't a full degree. She was able to do that while she was still working in her current role. We've got some personality in there. We're talking about why she's attracted to this organization as an employer. We've talked about, she's showing that she knows what's happening from a sustainability and environmental perspective within the local area, but also within their organization, which is the City of Darebin. And we brought some really nice personality in there. So we've talked about, as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I'm on a mission to challenge perceptions around the tip and encourage others to rethink their approach to waste. And we're also referencing, like you can see from my CV, like my background so far has been food related. But, over the years, this is how my interest in sustainability has kind of, increased. So fantastic cover letter there. We were really pleased with that one. It told a really coherent story about how this pastry chef has gone to being, really interested in working in sustainability. Another example, teacher wanting to come out of teaching. And this is someone who had been a teacher for sort of 20 odd years in the classroom, still passionate about education, still passionate about the subject that she taught, but just no longer had it in her to be in the classroom. Like didn't want to be on her feet in the classroom, working on the front line anymore. She was a parent. She in the past had a few health things going on, like just didn't quite have that energy to do the full on sort of classroom role, but was very committed to education, really wanted to continue in that space, but was looking to break into government. And that's often something that people can find quite challenging if they haven't worked in government before. Getting your foot in the door can be a challenge. The application process, you've got a key selection criteria, a cover letter, and you've obviously got to have your CV too. And that can feel really daunting for some people, particularly those who've literally never worked in an office before. And I remember her saying to me, how am I going to pull this off? And she worked with me on one of my programs, which was a few months long. We got her the first job she applied for in government, right, within 6 weeks. And the rest of our time working together was actually focused on her mindset and confidence and getting ready to make, all the practical kind of things that are involved in making a shift in terms of the way you work. So got the job really easily. That wasn't the problem at all. It was for her, the greatest work was around the mindset and believing that everything that she'd kind of achieved and sort of built for herself over the 20 years could be transferable into a completely different sector, like a completely different environment, sorry. So here, you know, CV, we very much kind of focused on, there's not a lot in here about teaching. We really focused on the impact that she'd kind of made. It's hard for me to explain this for you without you knowing what the role was. So it was that she moved into a senior program officer role, very much focused on I guess, kind of cultivating consistency and standards of teaching across her particular subject specialties. So we really focused on, you know, all of the pieces of work that she'd done there that would translate. There's very little about teaching in here. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how she restructured the teaching program, but really all of the things that we're talking about here are around assisting teachers and linking and streamlining the steps in planning, teaching, and assessment. Consistent standards, and so all of the points on here are very relevant to the role that she's gone to. And it was one interview. She got the job after one interview. They were so keen to have her on board. Another one of my favorite changes, myotherapist, who went from being a myotherapist and having her own business to moving into the not-for-profit sector. And again, she had never worked in corporate before. She never worked in an office before, was really struggling to see how all of her experience could sort of translate across. She had a particular interest in this not-for-profit. So this particular client had had some lived experience that related to the work that this not-for-profit did. She was very passionate about their cause, and she tried a number of times over a couple of years to get a foot in the door there without success. Again, she came in to work with me on one of my programs, and within 4 or 5 weeks, she'd got the job at the not-for-profit that she wanted to work at. And a key thing for her, or a key sort of tool that helped her, was a really, really great cover letter. And I know I'm still in contact with her, and I know that months and months after getting this job, the hiring manager still talks about that cover letter. So again, I will just read sort of a few little excerpts from it. The role appeals to me as it would enable me to use my strong suite of professional skills together with my lived experience as someone with a vision impairment to deliver a positive experience for clients. I would love to help contribute to Guide Dogs Victoria's broader mission of being the first choice provider of services for people with blindness. So we've talked a little bit about values alignment, mission alignment, but then there's also an anecdotal story that she's sharing. So she's building a rapport here and talking about the time that, you know, at age 15, she very much benefited from the experience and from the support services that this not-for-profit delivers. And this was the thing that got her across the line, together with a CV. So I redid her CV for her. And I've got another example. So on this page here, what you can see are snippets from 2 CVs. One is from a myotherapist who went from myotherapy to not-for-profit. And the other one is from a yoga teacher who had also run her own yoga business, but wanted to move into corporate. Okay, so she wanted to kind of be employed on payroll at an organization, and she was wanting to move into sort of an office manager type role, but it had been many, many years since she'd done that. I think something like maybe even 10, 12 years since she'd worked in an office. And something I often hear from people who are business owners, I work with a lot of small business owners or consultants who then want to go into employment, is this sort of fear that everything that they've done while they've had their own business doesn't count, or in some ways it's sort of less than. And there can be a real tendency for small business owners, sole traders, consultants to kind of really not see the value of everything that they can bring to employment. The reality is, I mean, I'm a small business owner. You're responsible for everything. So if you're a small business owner or you've run a business, you will be great. Probably you'll be all over admin, marketing, finance, customer service, operations. And so for both of these clients, the myotherapist who'd never worked in corporate and the yoga teacher who had not been in corporate for a very long time, I really kind of focused on sort of some of these transferable skills. We're not talking about yoga teaching at all here. We're talking about the retention rate, 80% of clients. We're talking about social media and like impactful posting, financial management. These are the things that a potential employer is going to want to see from you. So we're not really talking about the service that you offered, but more sort of the business skills that you would have developed around that. Okay. Here's five things you can start doing now. If you're thinking about transitioning into a new area of work or a new field of work, here are my sort of top tips of things that you can be thinking about now. So be upfront about your interests and aspirations. There can be a real tendency, particularly from people who are employed, to just have this idea or goal or dream or wish or thought or whatever you want to call it, and to feel like you have to be really, quiet about it. I say be upfront about your interests and aspirations. Gone are the days of sneaking around, harboring these sort of secret wishes. Once you have clarity, or at least a good sense around what it is you might like to pursue, start telling people about it, including your manager if you have a good relationship, okay? So this is not a conversation about I'm applying for new jobs and I'm leaving, right? I do not recommend that you do that. This is a conversation about, I'm really interested in this at the moment. This is something I've been wondering about. And it can be really conversational. You can even say to your manager, if you weren't the manager of the comms team, like, what would you do? All right. So this is definitely not about saying I'm planning on leaving. I'm not happy in what I do, but it's about just kind of sharing those interests, sharing those aspirations. If you tell other people, yes, there's a risk they're going to go, oh, look, that's crazy. Why would you do that? But it can also help to keep you a little bit more accountable sometimes. Number two, and this is something I work on heavily with my clients, is look for the opportunities within your existing workplace. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find that next job within your workplace, but you want to start looking for opportunities for secondments, involvement in projects, which will help provide exposure to what it is you're considering doing. Not only is that going to give you an opportunity to try before you buy, but if you're looking at potential roles that you want to do and you don't quite tick all of the boxes, see if you can find an opportunity while you're still gainfully employed, to tick that box. So like go on a working group. If there is some kind of whole of organization, change that's happening, can you be a spokesperson for your area? Okay, so looking for opportunities within your existing workplace. Looking for a course or professional development opportunity, a short course, something on LinkedIn Learning, a professional development opportunity that your workplace may even pay for. So again, this is not about rushing out there and doing anything rash. It's not about going back to uni and doing a whole new degree. It's about, what are some kind of quick wins that you can get under your belt? What are some things that you could get on your CV to make you more attractive as a candidate if you are looking to make a change? Establish a network of contacts and start building relationships. So if you've got an idea about where you want to go in terms of a different role or a particular organization that you want to get into, then it can be really helpful to just start to build that network. A lot of people talk about the hidden job market. Yes, there are jobs that sort of, are not advertised or are hidden. For the most part, most people do get their jobs from having seen a job or making an application. But you never know. There might be someone who knows something that's coming up, someone who's going to sort of speak up for you, someone who's willing to kind of mentor you, give you a bit of advice. The sooner you can surround yourself by the people who, are experts or connected in what it is you want to do, the sooner you can sort of start to shift your thinking and sort of immerse yourself, I guess, more in the people that you want to be surrounded by in the future. So I'm a big believer in networking. And it's something that I support all of my clients in, how to cultivate those relationships. Who are the people that you want to get on your side? Who are the people that you should be reaching out with and connecting with? Invest in a professionally written CV. For me, obviously, it's what I do for a living. I'm a career coach and a CV writer. Invest in a professionally written CV, which showcases your talents and transferable skills and will tell that coherent professional story that appeals to the right employers, so that when you apply, it's like, oh, I can see why this person is here. I can see how they've gotten, onto this pile, and it's not sort of like, oh, the pastry chef that appeared out of thin air. Like it's clear what's happened here. And invest in an experienced coach. So if you're thinking about making a career change, whether it's a pivot or a shift or a large career change, I'm yet to have a client they might say it behind my back and I just don't know about it, but I'm yet to have a client who has regretted having made that investment and having, had someone support them through that process. Fear is temporary, regret is forever. Something I often hear from people is, but what if I make this change? What if I spend the money on the course? or I kind of give up my job, that safe job, or I try and do the thing, and it's not the right decision. Like, I really want to do this, but I only want to do it if it's the right decision. The reality is, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't. Sometimes you'll make that career move or that career change and it won't work out. I have clients who come to me and they've made a career change, and they've given it a good go, but it hasn't worked out, because the truth is, until you give it a go, you're not going to know. Fear is temporary, regret is forever. Hopefully you have taken some useful tips away from this session today, whether it's just some things to think about or some practical tips that you might want to go away and sort of put into practice. If you're thinking about a career change or you're at a career crossroads, I offer genuinely free, chock full of value 30-minute mini coaching calls. You are welcome to book one of those. My amazing VA has put on a QR code there. I have no idea how that works, so I can't help you with that. But you can follow me on Instagram at small.circle, or find me on LinkedIn, Hannah Hamad. So I'll leave those details up there in case you want to connect with me. I would love to hear from you. They are genuinely chock full of value calls. If I feel like we would be a good fit to work together, I will always let you know that. But please know, if you come on a call with me, there is never an obligation. And I received an email out of the blue last week, and the email was from someone who was lucky enough to have had a half-an-hour call with you. And she said, you probably won't remember me. And I did, because I remember everyone who I've had a call with. And she was a school teacher who had sort of really just had enough of it, didn't want to be a teacher anymore. And now she's going to become a mortgage broker. So she's had a radical career change just off the back of that 30-minute call that we had. So I'm going to shrink this screen down a little bit now. Welcome any questions that you may have, any comments, and feel free to connect. If you've got something that's sort of personal to you and you don't want to share it now, send me an email, slide into my DMs on Instagram. I would love to hear from you.
Thanks so much, Hannah. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be sending out a recording of this presentation to all attendees. But yeah, if you've got any questions, now's the chance. Looks like your presentation covered everyone's questions, Hannah. I don't think we've got any, so it looks really good.
If anyone thinks of anything, please, don't be shy. You can reach out to me. I would love to have a call with you, or just even answer any questions. If you've got something unique to your circumstances and you don't want to share that, with everyone here, feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, everyone.